Hello dudes and dudettes, it's me E.H. Ivins, and this is another edition of the Radical Reset. Well, we're in the midst of an election, so let's talk about election issues. In fact, let's talk about the most important election issues that are facing us at this moment in time. This will change, as soon as tomorrow or next week, but as of this second, Monday morning, August the 17th, 2020, these are the most important issues facing all the parties today and how they're going to handle them and how an anti-politist would handle them. And I'm going to go through the issues. We're going to talk about vote by mail. We're going to talk about the COVID economy. We're going to talk about foreign policy, followed by healthcare, followed by schools, followed by the dollar. Those are all the issues I'm going to discuss this morning. And I'm going to discuss the positions simply, succinctly, and without spin of Democrats, Republicans, Libertarians, and us as anti-politists. Of course, we're not running anybody for president, but the other three are. I'm going to talk about where we would come down as anti-political on each of the issues. Anti-political simply meaning that we use our brains and we don't worry about whatever special interests or ideology we're necessarily attached to. Anti-politism is pragmatism with elections that cannot be corrupted in a Congress and a presidency that is fully representational of the population of our country and any other country it might be tried in later down the road. Okay, so, and by the way, for those of you who haven't checked it out yet, please pick up a copy of The Radical Reset. Let me hold it up where I know you're going to see it. The Radical Reset. This is the manifesto of anti-politism. You can get an issue free for Kindle downloads if you're a Prime member, or for a nominal charge for the paperback I'm holding in my hand from Amazon. So read The Radical Reset. It'll lay out anti-politism in detail if you are not yet familiar, as well as positions on every issue you can possibly imagine right out there for you to attack. Okay, and by the way, when I say for you to attack, I mean discuss and debate with me. Look, I will change my mind. Even as we speak, I am updating a chapter of The Radical Reset. My editor, I did a rewrite on one of the chapters that has to do with funding the economy forward during the automated economy, and I'm adopting universal basic income into a radical reset. Things change. My mind changes. Unlike most politicians, speaking of myself, and I hope for you as well, I am unafraid to change my mind when new facts enter the picture that persuade me that what I thought before was wrong. I'm open to it. I don't use slur as a debate. I use reason. And so when someone out-reasons me, and I'm the first to admit I'm not the smartest man in the world, I am more than happy to listen to what they have to say, and if it's viable and it makes sense, I'll change my mind. Okay, so anyway, let's go through these issues, and we're going to start with vote by mail. Now, when we discuss vote by mail, let us not confuse vote by mail with absentee voting, which is what the Democrats were doing yesterday, as a matter of fact, on all the Sunday news shows. President Trump came out and issued a statement that he didn't think the post office could handle vote by mail, and he tried to separate that from absentee voting, but of course the mainstream media spun it as if he was trying to cancel all mail-in voting. Now, let's be clear. What President Trump was talking about is vote by mail, not absentee voting. Absentee voting is where you and I, as voters, would request a ballot in our name, which would be sent to our address of record. It would be confirmed ahead of time by our county or our city's voting apparatus or bureaucracy, and so we know we have a valid ballot. We get it and we would vote in advance of the coming election. This is very common. Nobody is criticizing this. It's well done because all the voters are pre-qualified before they even receive the ballot. Then they get the ballot, then they vote. Vote by mail is a different story. Vote by mail is something that primarily Democrats are advocating, and some Republicans, some of the mainstream old school Republicans are advocating to vote during this COVID election, which is basically shotgun out a ballot to every registered voter in America and let them return it and vote from home. Well, this might make sense until you really think about it, because number one, voter rolls are full of outdated entries. This is the nature of bureaucracy. There are millions, not thousands, millions of people on voter rolls who are dead, who are in prison, who have left the country, etc. In other words, the voter rolls are wildly outdated and they need to be updated, but that's not going to happen in the next few weeks before the election. We only have 3 months to go before the election. And anybody who knows anything about government knows no bureaucracy can act fast enough. So the Democratic position on vote by mail, and they don't deny that the post office probably can't handle it. Their position is throw money at it. I gave you a link below to an article from National Public Radio that you can take a look at what they're proposing. But basically, what Democrats always propose, this is going to become a redundant feature of this particular podcast, their solution to everything is throw money at it. Let's throw another $25 billion at a failed bureaucracy and see if we can make it work. Of course, that won't work. Next, the Republicans, basically their attitude is, fuck you, let the train wreck. You know, President Trump is saying, I'm not going to fund this travesty. If you want to do it, do it. And when the train wrecks, I told you so. Okay, that's the Republican point of view. That'll show them. That's great, except we're coming into an election of a president, which is much too important to say fuck him over. So I don't know that that's the best solution, Republicans, although that is certainly the Donald Trump solution, which is almost the Donald Trump solution to everything. Fuck him. Anyway, Libertarians, they figure whatever, the elections are rigged against us anyway. They know that Joe Jorgensen is not going to win this election. They take no, I'm in the Libertarian chat rooms all the time, there's no particular Libertarian theme running through it. Libertarians, there is a Libertarian Party, but Libertarians themselves are not an organized bunch. They range from anarchists to QAnon theorists to anti-vaxxers. There's a lot of, weird people in the Libertarian Party. There are a lot of very smart people who are Libertarian. People like the late Milton Friedman, like Thomas Sowell, who I think is possibly the smartest man in the world currently, people like that. But there are also a lot of nutty Libertarians. The Libertarian Party itself is basically, and Joe Jorgensen has been ignoring this issue, is basically, what the fuck, we're not going to win anyway, let's not get involved. Antipolitism, we wouldn't need to worry about any of this because an anti-political system does away with elections as we understand them. Remember, anti-politism is selection of Congress the way we select juries with screens. So you can read about this in A Radical Reset, but we would have no election. You cannot have a fraudulent election where there is no election. So how do we have a democratic system without an election? Read the book. I'm not going to cover that today. But anti-politism's point of view on this is, why are we having an election at all? There is no such thing as a fair and free election in the current corrupt environment. There's too much money involved, too many special interests, too many ways to jigger the system, gerrymander districts, etc. Let's just forget the whole fucking thing. And by the way, Trump, if there's going to be, and I know there's going to be an election, so let's get real, he's right about this. This is a train wreck. This is the most avoidable oncoming train wreck. Again, let me be clear. Absentee voting, no one is talking about that. What I'm talking about, what Trump talked about, what we really should be talking about is this vote by mail, mail it out to every dead body in America, and wait to see if it turns to shit afterwards, which it will turn. This is predictable. No bureaucracy does a job well, so that's where we stand on that. Okay, next online is the COVID economy. Now, the COVID economy, we are in a depression statistically. Our economy shrunk 32% in the last quarter. That's a depression. The Great Depression, it only shrunk 15%. So to make, only, that's a big shrink. But we've shrunk 32%. Now, Trump wants us all to believe it's going to bounce back immediately, and the Democrats want us to believe we need them to make it better. But here are the basic positions. Democrats, predictably, let's throw money at it. They've passed a $3 trillion pork bill for the next phase of funding full of shit that has nothing to do with COVID whatsoever. There are bits and pieces of it that do, so every time an issue comes up, they always have an answer. Well, we already voted money for this, we already voted money for that, but they always ignore the fact that they also voted money for bullshit that has nothing to do with COVID. Like, for example, bailing out underfunded state and local pension plans of democratic cities and states, which has not a fucking thing to do with COVID. It's a problem that was set up by fiscal irresponsibility long before COVID hit, which is why the Republicans, their answer is, throw less money at it. Okay, so their answer is marginally better. We're not going to go with the Democratic plan, throwing money at shit that has nothing to do with COVID, but let's continue to throw money at it. So they're still going the Keynesian modern monetary theory, let's just throw money at it bullshit, just less so. They're like less poisonous, relatively speaking, than the Democrats are. The Libertarians are laissez faire. Laissez faire, let the disease run. Laissez faire means, by the way, it doesn't mean trickle down. For those of you who don't speak French, it does not mean, there's no such thing as trickle down economics. Laissez faire means let us do it, okay? Let us do it. It comes from years and years ago when Frenchmen were asked, how should we run the economy? They said, laissez faire, let us do it. Just let us run the economy, get the government the fuck out of the way, the whole thing will bounce back. Libertarians are correct about this. This is the policy that would also match anti-politism with one twist. Since we are not libertarians, we are anti-politics, this is where I introduce universal basic income. Universal basic income is the answer to pull us out of this disaster that we've brought upon ourselves, and at the same time fix everything, including balancing the budget of the United States at the same time. We could do it all in one fell swoop. Now, that would require shutting down all other federal functions except defense, state, treasury, and justice. Let people make their own choices, isolate the sick and elderly. Everybody else can go on the street, wear a mask, don't wear a mask, do whatever you want to do, herd immunity. Look, I don't deny that COVID is real. COVID is real. I don't deny that COVID is deadly. COVID is 10 times more deadly than the flu. Let's cut the crap. It's going to kill a certain amount of people. But when you're in a position of leadership of a country, you make decisions, sometimes life and death decisions, and you have to accept there are going to be casualties. The vast majority, the vast majority of people that have died of COVID had underlying conditions that would lead a reasonable person to believe they were going to die anyway. They might not have died that day, they might have died 6 months later or a year later, but they were going to die anyway. So the question might be, why are we destroying our economy and our country over people that were on their way already out the door? And is this any different from, I'm being just analytical about this, is this any different from a president making a decision to send troops into war and understanding that some of those troops are going to be killed? We're dealing with a threat, an existential threat to our culture in the form of the COVID economy and the depression it's causing that could bring the whole thing down around our ears. Is this not the time to abandon bullshit politics and do the right thing? And the right thing here is allow herd immunity to take place. Allow the virus to spread throughout the population, except common sense, self-isolating if you're old, sick, in a nursing home, so on and so forth. In this way, we do the best we can in protecting those that are vulnerable, and at the very same time, we stop destroying our economy. The reason for universal basic income is we've dug this hole so deep and driven people out of the workforce so completely. This is a great time to get rid of all of our fucked up social programs, from AFDC to Social Security and everything in between, and replace it with universal basic income. I've done a lot more on this. There's a previous video on universal basic income. You can pick it up right here on YouTube on the Antipolitism page, where I discuss it more at length. And of course, as I said, I'm adding a chapter to a radical reset, so if you do your download, you'll pick up that new chapter as well. But understand that basically I believe what the libertarians believe. Laissez faire with the introduction of UBI. Libertarians, by the way, go apeshit at UBI because they don't take the time to understand it. This is the difference between slur and argument. You know, when I get into this discussion with libertarians, I get immediate slur. You know, it's against liberty. They don't know what they haven't taken the time to research it. Do your homework. Charles Murray's plan. Let me just give you a little hint. Look at Charles Murray's plan for UBI, then look at Andrew Yang's. But Charles Murray's primarily, which is what I'm basically copying because I think it's a terrific plan. Okay, moving along. Let's talk foreign policy. Okay, so Democrats, now, just as I'm speaking to you last week, Trump accomplished something huge. He got the United Arab Emirates to normalize relations with Israel. That is huge. Adding that to Egypt and Jordan, there's never going to be another Middle East war between Israel and its neighbors, because nobody attacking them without those other countries involved have any chance of winning. Saudi Arabia has excellent relations with Israel now beneath the scenes, and ultimately will also normalize relations. The Palestinians have done what Palestinians always do, which is never miss an opportunity to miss an opportunity. So they're out of the picture. The rest of the Arab states are tired of listening to them complain, and they're tired of funding a corrupt government. And now there are two Palestinian governments, which is double the fun of corruption. So what the Democrats want to do, now that just sets the stage where we are. What the Democrats want to do is go back to the old days. Act tough on China with no actual action. Talk a good anti-China game like, you know, Biden used to talk, but go right back to sucking the Chinese penis. And at the same thing, ditto on Russia. You know, talk a good game, but again, let's not actually get tough. Let's just talk like it. Re-enter the Iranian deal. They want to re-enter the fucked up, no good, allowed nuclear weapons and a clear path to them for the Persians deal that Trump withdrew from. One of his smartest moves, by the way. And they want to re-enter it. They're very clear about this. And they do want to do basically the same old, same old. Now the Republicans, it's all about America first, whatever the fuck that means. I don't know of any president in U.S. history that didn't take America's interest first, except for perhaps Barack Obama, who was the great apologizer. Every other president, Democrat and Republican, up until Obama, never apologized for U.S. actions. just carry them forward, acknowledge that we make mistakes, but our heart's in the right place, we try to do the right thing, but the enemy of good is perfect, and sometimes we have fucked up. America first, that Trump advocates, is just a restatement of the obvious. America's interests should come before those of any other foreign interests. Now, libertarians say neutral isolation, essentially, which is to say, obviously, America first, it's in America's interest. That's one of those trite things that every American's going to, of course America's going to come first with any American of any party, really, when you get right down to it, except Barack Obama. So, the bottom line is, what libertarians are saying is, why are we involved in all these fucking foreign wars, and why are we getting involved in things that have nothing to do with us, and why are we involved in things where there's no American interest? So they are a neutral isolationism. Okay, now, Antipolitism says, okay, we need to stop and do a global reevaluation of U.S. interests. An anti-political president would call together all the experts on all the fields across the board, sit down, and listen to all ideas about U.S. defense and foreign policy interests, and listen carefully, because remember, anti-politism eliminates special interests. What will come from that is we're going to end up withdrawing from pointless wars like Afghanistan. Revenge was a good purpose after 9/11, but we're still occupying the fucking thing 20 years later. This is coming to nothing. So an anti-politist would say, what the fuck are we doing there? U.S. interests are unclear, withdraw. Okay, at some point you got to decide to fish or cut bait. We've lost 15,000, more than 15,000 of our boys and girls in Afghanistan and the Middle East. What the fuck are we doing there? Particularly in light of the fact that the United States has become a net oil exporter. We do not have an interest in the Middle East any longer except as peacemaker, and we don't need to be involved in these wars. We would beef up the Navy as the guarantor of free trade, since almost all commerce travels by water internationally, some by air, but that's very expensive, mostly by ship. The Navy should be bigger, the biggest thing that it should. I mean, I'm not going to name a number of ships, 600 ships, 300 ships, however many ships. We do an analysis, we fund for that. Within Antipolitism's budget and shutting down the government except for those 4 departments, we can easily afford it, even with UBI, and reorganize the military, with a heavy emphasis on the Navy, since the Navy's primary responsibility will be to keep trade lanes open. And then, we're America first, but we want to trade. Free trade creates jobs, okay? I'm not talking about illegal immigration. I'm not even going to talk about that today. That's a separate subject for another day. Free trade, fair free trade, is good for everybody. So, basically, America's trade policy would be open and free trade with any country that offers us open and free trade, and reciprocal penalties for those that penalize our products as well. In other words, common sense. And make reciprocal agreements and make an ally out of everybody. We don't have to oppose everybody on everything. Sometimes the best policy is stand back. Sometimes the best policy is let those fuckers get, for example, the Russians are in Syria, good for them. Why the fuck would we want to be involved in that disaster? I mean, that's just one small example. Okay, moving along, the next issue, because this is just a touch on it issue, point by point of the issues of the day, healthcare. The Democrats are very clear. They want to restore Obamacare to its previous state, which was fucked up to begin with. They want to move as quickly as possible to single-payer Medicare for all. Even the ones who say they're against it, like Kamala Harris, are privately for it. They just don't. They just know that it's politically untenable today. But they think if they get Obamacare up to where it used to be, and they move the country onto the exchanges, ultimately it will lead to Medicare for all. This is what they want as soon as possible. Again, as always, throw money at it. That's what Democrats do best. Throw money at it. Fuck if it'll ever work, but throw money at it to appease our special interests. The Republicans want to go with the status quo, which is a pared back about Trump about every other week says, here comes my plan, here comes my plan, the plan that never comes. One of his problems, the president's problems, is he's like the boy who cries wolf. He always has a plan that's coming out. It's a running joke about his infrastructure. Every now and then he has infrastructure week, and then there's no infrastructure. I mean, this is just typical Trump. I've got a plan, it's a great plan, but the plan is really the status quo. The plan is really the cutback version of Obamacare that exists today and kind of muddle along as we are. The Libertarians would say, let the free market work. Get everything the fuck out of the way. Get rid of all regulations, all barriers to interstate competition, all government mandates, and get rid of the FDA, get rid of the things that stand in the way of licensing of physicians, nurses, and practitioners. Just bring more to the market through free trade and let the market adjust itself. This, by the way, is the only intelligent system. Healthcare was fucked up by the government to begin with. Check out my earlier video, which is called Healthcare is Fucked Up. I believe that was the title of that video. It's in this, and it'll lay it out in full. But anti-politism and libertarianism have essentially the same point of view. Get the fucking government out of the picture, and the problem will take care of itself. As always happens in a free market, only a government could fuck up a market and then decide it's the solution to the market that it fucked up to begin with. For those of you old enough to remember, before Medicare, there was no health care issue in the United States. Now we've got a myriad of problems, and it all leads back to one place. Too much fucking government and too much fucking bureaucracy and too much central planning making fucking rules for people in diverse backgrounds, in diverse states, and diverse locales. And one size does not fit all, and the idea of national health care in a country of 340 million with as many cultures as we have within it is absurd on its face, and let the free market work. Okay, schools. Let's move on to schools. The big talk is, should the kids go back to school? Well, to what I said earlier, of course the kids should go back to school. Stop fucking around. Kids, thank God, are largely either immune to COVID or get it so mildly that it doesn't even matter, and unless that child, God forbid, is critically ill to begin with, which is in a completely separate issue, and that child should be isolated. But meanwhile, everybody else needs to go back to school. Send them back to school, but that's not the end of it. Here's what the Democrats want to do. They want to throw bushels of money at the teachers' unions, kill the charter schools, and maintain the status quo that they created by the Department of Education created in 1979 by Jimmy Carter, which has done nothing but fuck up education from the federal level and throw a bone to the teachers' unions, the most pernicious and destructive unions in the United States, who always cry it's for the child and it has nothing to do with the child, evidenced by the fact that charter school statistics, just to name one statistic, children do far, far better in non-unionized schools than they do in unionized schools, period, end of story. And all the arguments the teachers' unions makes, like the cherry picking of students and so on, are just untrue. They just come up with bullshit to protect their pocketbooks. They have the greatest 9-month jobs in the world, and now they get to stay at home and pretend they have 9-month jobs. So this is fucking ridiculous. Send the kids back to school. Let's not just keep throwing money at it. The Republicans' answer is charters, charters, charters. Education Secretary Betsy DeVos is all about charter schools. I agree with her. I am all about charter schools. In other words, attach the money to the pupil, not to the school district, and let the parents choose what school, private or otherwise, they want their child to go to. This, of course, is the libertarian position and is the anti-political position. The money should attach to the child, not the school district, and the child should be able to go to any school they want, religious or not, private or charter, or public if that's what they choose. Make the publics turn into charters and compete. If they can't compete, fuck them. That's just the way it goes. It's better for the children, better for everyone else. Fuck the teachers, fuck the red movement, fuck their unions, fuck their pension demands. It's all a lie. They always wrap it up in the children, the children, the children. This has nothing to do with children. If this had anything to do with children, then the children in New York City School District who are standing in line to be in charter schools wouldn't have them being shut down by people like Bill de Blasio and his leftist friends who have no concern really for the children. It's all about the unions. The unions, the unions, the unions. Public employees, employees of the state, employees where taxpayers are the ultimate customer should not be allowed to unionize. You cannot strike the taxpayers. That should not be allowed. It should be outlawed once and for all and wiped away. I'm very hostile to teachers' unions. I'm very hostile to public employees' unions. You cannot strike the taxpayers. It shouldn't be possible. You shouldn't organize. If you accept a government position, then you accept it. It's a free market. You don't have to take it if you don't like it. We're just going to wipe it away. We're not going to need all these fucking bureaucrats anyway. Finally, it brings me to the dollar. Now, the Democrat policy as far as the dollar or the sanctity of the dollar, right now gold has hit an all-time high. It's hit an all-time high because a lot of smart people out there, and cryptos are going apeshit. My crypto account has doubled and damn near doubled again, okay? I mean, Bitcoin, Chainlink, Ethereum, Zcash, the list goes on and on and on and on, are all going. Why? Because a lot of smart money out there knows the dollar is headed for collapse. What's the Democrat answer? Print them up. Print those motherfuckers up. We believe in modern monetary theory. We can print up all the money we want because the dollar is the basket currency and taxes must be paid in dollars. And what are people anyway but just beings who recycle money back to the tax coffers of the government where we know better from the center and can control your life better, so print them up. It doesn't fucking matter. Let's just throw money at it. That's the Democrats. And I'm not exaggerating. If you think I'm exaggerating, feel free to comment below. But you know I'm not. It's the truth. The Republicans, let's print a little less and pray. They don't really have a program. Believe me, when I tell you the Democrats are full of shit, the Republicans are just as full of shit. They don't want to say no to their military industrial complex special interests either. What they advocate is basically the same things the Democrats advocate, only a little bit less. Donald Trump is no budget balancer. Donald Trump gave us $1 trillion deficit before fucking COVID. Now we're into a $4 trillion deficit. The Democrats want to drive it to $7 billion. Republicans only want to drive it to $6 trillion. Sorry, I said billion. I meant trillion. Trillion with a T, which is a million millions or 1,000 billions. They want to go to only a $6 trillion or a $7 trillion deficit. Fuck. Cancer is cancer, guys. It's going to kill you, whether it's cancer light or cancer heart. And this is a malignancy, and they're going to undermine the dollar. What would libertarians say? Mostly gold. When I read my libertarians and what their position is we need to back up the dollar with gold and silver to a lesser extent. That's not a bad idea, but what I would do, and what I talk about in a radical reset as an anti-politist, is I would call in all the old dollars and issue new E-dollars, which would be backed by a basket of assets, including gold and silver, and other assets as well, in addition to a limited supply. But for example, the United States has enormous oil reserves, and we can use those reserves as real value and to back up the U.S. dollar. That's just as real as any other commodity, and just as in demand, and just as important. And I know all you Greens are going apeshit, but grab a hold of yourself. And we just need to. And I say an e-currency because there's no reason anymore for paper money or metal money. Why do we even have dollar bills and change? I mean, who the fuck? If you got a phone, you got money. You can go around and use anything from Venmo to Zelle to your debit card to whatever, or prepaid debit cards for those of you who's fucked up your credit past the point of all recognition, in which case my suggestion to you is clean up your credit so it's not fucked up beyond all recognition and you can get a bank account again. But the bottom line is the dollar has to be strong. Now, I've covered what I think, let me just review them really, really quickly, are the important issues of the day. We talked about vote by mail, we talked about COVID economy, foreign policy, healthcare, schools, and the dollar. I realize there are other issues as well, but these are just the most important issues of the day. So, what should you do? We're going into an election. What would I do if I were you going to this election? My answer is I wouldn't vote at all. I'd either vote for the Libertarian, who's got it right on most things, but has absolutely no chance, or not at all. To vote for a Republican or a Democrat because you want to vote to be on the winning team, what? Like you're going to get a medal? Are they going to come over to your house and tie a ribbon around your neck and say, good for you for voting for us? Thank you for being a part of the winning team? Are you going to feel better? And are you going to feel better when whoever's elected, owing to my earlier video on who would want to be the fucking president now anyway, whoever wins is going to end up being Herbert Hoover? Do you really want to be part of the team, the winning team that got to ruin the fucking country? Because if the Democrats win, for example, which looks like they will today, the world's going to turn to shit one way or the other, Trump or the Democrats. The world's about to turn to shit. And when it does, whoever's in office is going to be blamed. Why do you have to be on the winning team? What is it that's magical about not wasting your vote? So my suggestion to you is either vote Libertarian for today, since there are no anti-political candidates at the moment, or don't vote at all. Because nothing you do is going to stop the train wreck of the two major parties on virtually every important issue of the day. They suck. They suck bad. They suck totally. They are in an indefensible position. They have brought us here to this precipice of destruction, and we need to change it. And what's the best way to change it? By becoming anti-politists. So, to remind you, pick up, I always get this wrong about where to aim this thing, pick up your free copy of The Radical Reset, the Manifesto of Antipolitism. Yours free as a download in the Kindle Lending Library, or you can get a copy for a very nominal charge in paperback as well. Okay, click the notification button, click the subscribe button, be sure to go to antipolitism.org, text the number above on the screen to join the movement, become a part of the solution, stop being part of the problem. You don't have to be part of a winning team just because everyone else is. Just because everyone else is diving off the cliff doesn't mean you have to dive off with them. Be bold, be different, be unique, be individualistic. Talk about something different, and that something different is anti-politism. The new ism, the only ism that can save our country. Become an anti-politist. It's the only way out. And that's it for today. Thank you for listening, and this is E.H. Ivins signing off.